Hello there. In this video I'm going to give you step-by-step instructions on how to take one of those mini Si4732 radios with not such good sound and one of the popular ATS-20 Plus radios with not such good display and combine them to provide this, what I think is a gorgeous looking hybrid that I think gives you the best of both. And before you think, oh, that's too complicated for me, it's actually simpler than you think. So here's the amazing value Si4732 Mini, and it's got that gorgeous display on it. Really capable of so many things. I'm looking forward to the custom software for this. A little switch on the side which isn't very nice. I don't know how long that will last. I gotta say, awful speaker on the back, which meant it was cast as a novelty item for me pretty quickly. And you've got the headphone socket on the right there with not a very good headphone amplifier and a single knob for control. And then you've got the ever popular ATS-20 Plus, which is a pretty good radio, and it's come down in price a lot actually. If you haven't already got one of these, it's still worth considering to get one. Good speaker compared with the Mini. Decent headphone amplifier, decent antenna jack. Don't like the power switch on the back, but you can't have everything. A separate USB-C for charging and USB Mini, I think that is, for programming the built-in nano. One nice thing is you've got a lot of separate buttons for functions, which makes the user interface quite easy to use. Right, so let's hear the sound quality comparison between the two.
The phone is manually disassembled because of the lithium-ion battery must be removed. Then
oh, look at that display, it's gorgeous. But what a letdown the audio is.
Everything is then fed into a furnace where it's heated to high temperatures, and that's how the valuable metals are extracted. Here's Mihaela explaining the process. When we recycle a phone...
Well, that's enough of that. Now let's try the ATS-20. Takes a while to boot.
Step in our recycling plant. It's designed to recover, and that
what a
means
difference.
Resources get a second chance, and
so even though it's had reasonable sound, I started not to use it because of the display. I just found it a bit irritating because it's so small. And then I stopped using this Mini because of the audio. So I thought if I combine the two, then I got a new lease of life in something which I think would be a good product and ready for all this community software which I think is going to come out. So before we get stuck in and combine these two, let me just share a bit of theory with you and work out how we're going to do it. Now before I dig into that, I just want to say a big thank you for the sponsor of today's video, PCBWay. PCBWay are my go-to when I want to have some PCBs manufactured, and they even do an assembly service as well. Simply upload your Gerber file, enter the quantity required, PCB color, thickness and other parameters, and they'll provide you an instant quote. They'll also provide a number of delivery options as well, so you can have your PCBs within a matter of days. In addition, they do a PCB assembly service, flex rigid PCBs, HDI PCBs, CNC machining and even 3D printing. Now when ordering PCBs, you can just have the bare PCB and populate themselves. Or as I like to do, I like to have them populate the difficult part, which is the SMD components, and then put in the through-hole components myself. Or you can even ask them to put in the through components as well. So you'd have a complete number of flexible manufacturing and assembly options. For more information, head over to PCBWay.com. I'll leave the link in the description. So I'm going to show you a high-level block diagram of both, and then we can decide which bits we're going to keep from both. So this is the ATS-20, and you'll notice the antenna connects to a FM bandpass filter and an FM amplifier. This is something that the Mini doesn't have. So then that goes through into the Si4732, which is our radio chip, of course. And then another good feature is we have a stereo headphone amplifier, and that headphone jack also serves as an FM antenna, which also the Mini doesn't have. And then it's got a discrete power amplifier and a decent sized speaker. Now, on the downside, if you could call it that, at the center the processor is only an Arduino Nano, which is not very powerful, not capable of many new things or tricks, and that connects to a really small mono color LED display. The one good thing is, in addition to the encoder, you've got a selection of buttons which makes it easier to operate. You've got a separate USB for charging, and then you've got a battery which is quite a decent size. I think it's around 1000 milliamps, if I'm not wrong, but it's certainly bigger than the Mini. Now let's have a look at the Si4732 Mini. Now the first thing to note is there's no real front-end processing of RF. You've got a simple LC filter for FM and AM, but that's it. There's no amp. So that feeds into the Si4732, of course. And then the headphones connects directly to the Si4732, which does have a headphone amplifier, but it's not very good, or should I say not very powerful. So there's been complaints that it's been a bit quiet for some people. And then we've got a dedicated mono amplifier for the loudspeaker, or mini loudspeaker. Now at the heart of this radio, you've got the fantastic ESP32S3 processor, 16 megabytes of flash, 8 megabytes of RAM. It wipes the floor with a Nano used in the ATS-20, and it's capable of so much. Can't wait to see what community software does with that with the display. Single encoder. It's been a bit tricky to use in the stock software, but the new software makes it much easier to use. A fantastic color display. I didn't need to mention that. We all know how good that is. And then you've got a single USB, which is used for both charging and programming. Now the battery is smaller than the ATS-25, of course. I mean, it's 800 milliamp hours as opposed to 1000. So let's compare the two. Here's the exciting bit, and decide what we want to keep from both radios. So of course, without doubt, the first thing that springs to mind is that fantastic color display. So let's just mark that as a keeper. And of course, that works hand in hand with the equally fantastic ESP32S3. So of course, we're going to keep that, which also means that we're going to have to keep the single encoder system as well, because that's what the software is written for. And then another key feature on the ATS-20 we want to keep is the dedicated stereo headphone amplifier, which connects then to the headphones. It also provides an FM antenna and the dedicated mono power amp for that large loudspeaker. And then we want to keep the RF front end that the Mini doesn't have, the FM bandpass and FM amp. And the battery is better on the AS20, so we'll keep that one. So then we've got a choice of which Si4732, but as you can see, we've got more connections and use around the Si4732 and the ATS20, so we'll keep that one. So that's pretty much it for the things we're going to keep. So what we don't want to cross out. So we don't want the other Si32 AF amp, charge system or battery. And of course we don't want the front panel or the Nano. So that's pretty much it. That's our high-level architecture for what we want to keep from our hybrid. Now, how do we make it work? So the ESP32 in the Mini needs to talk to and control the Si4732 and the AS20. So, well, the first thing we need to do then is connect these control lines between the Si4732 and the ESP32. So we've got the data connection, the clock, and also the reset line. The processor likes to control that for doing certain things, and changing mode or loading custom software into the 4732. Now the problem is if we do that, we've got two processors connected to the same line. We could either take out the Arduino Nano, which is difficult, or we could somehow disable it so those lines become disconnected. Now let me show you a trick. If we take the reset line, which is active when it's taken low, so we take it to 0 volts to make it a logic low, it effectively disables and puts into high impedance state those lines. So effectively they become disconnected without us actually having to remove the Arduino. So making that link is a lot easier than removing the Arduino. So that's what we're going to do there. Then we got a similar problem with the two Si4732s because they're both connected to those control lines between the processor and the radio chip. So we again need to disconnect the lines somehow. The data clock and reset line, I should say. Again, we can do the same trick. We can connect reset on the Si4732 to ground and effectively make all those lines go at high impedance, but there's still a problem because that reset line is also connected to the reset line of the Si47 we want to use and the processor. So we do unfortunately have to make a physical disconnection. So no avoiding that, but it's only one, so that's not too bad. And then last but not least, we need to think about power. So we want the battery from the ATS-20 because it's bigger and better, and we need to connect that battery connection to the battery connection of the ESP32. This is so that the software running in the ESP32 on the Mini will display the battery voltage correctly, or at least the battery life correctly. If we connected the Mini to, say, the 3.3 volt supply on the ATS-20, then it wouldn't show the correct battery condition or status. And finally, the ground, as I've just drawn in there. So that's it. That's our complete hybrid radio and how to do it. So without further ado, let's roll our sleeves up and get into it. Right, so let's start by taking the Mini apart. So here you can see we got the battery in that tiny little speaker. They are 800 milliamp hours. First of all, let's disconnect that speaker. You might find in your model yours is soldered in. You just have to unsolder those connections. I do have another one of these, and I will compare them in a minute because the build's slightly different. How small that switch is. So next, let's pull the PCB out. Please be really careful. Remember, there's a ribbon cable underneath, a very fine one, and it'd be so easy to tear that. That's the one between the PCB and the display. Be really, really gentle. There it is, you see. You see, it's like paper. It's so easy to damage that. So the first thing I'd want to do is disconnect it. So to remove it, you have to unlock it by flicking up that little plastic ridge or lip. You see that? It moves up, and then you're free to move the cable out. Okay, now we're safe. We got the display out, so just put that to one side. Take great care of it. Now, you see that black piece of plastic on the display there? You may or may not have that fitted to yours, depending on the model you get or who builds it. But just leave it in place. That will help push the display into place when you got the PCB behind it. Another 3D printed part, just like the case. Now I've got another one here, which is looks like it's built by another company or person. You see a few little differences I'll point out. First of all, you'll notice that the ESP32 appears different, but actually they're more or less the same spec. They're both 16 megabyte flash, 8 megabyte RAM, same speed. Both got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. However, the one at the top, the one that we're modifying, which let's call it the original, I think it was the earlier one, it's got a Bluetooth antenna socket on it. You see that it's made by different people according to the labeling, but other than that, it looks the same. Well, actually, one difference is that the speaker is not on a socket, and the reset and the buttons for boot and reset are on the newer one, but not the original. And crystal looks a bit different. I think the biggest difference is the speaker, and it's not a good thing. Look how small the speaker is on this one. You see the speaker on the original, it looks like it's a phone speaker or something. It's small, but look at this in comparison. It's pathetic. I've seen bigger speakers in headphones, and this one does actually sound a lot worse than the original. So it's a bit of a lottery when you buy these. The only thing I can say is that if you're looking for marking, you can see you've got radio on the original, which appears to be better and have a better speaker. But on the second one, which has got the crappy speaker, it's just plain. Of course, there's no guarantee. These people building the cheaper ones could also put radio on the front. So yeah, it's a bit of a lottery. Right, let's get back to it. So the next thing to do is to remove the battery. I'm just going to remove the positive of the battery first and then insulate it before I accidentally short the thing out. And yeah, I'm talking from experience here. And now the negative. Now you might have seen a new version of this with a high impedance antenna input mod and a headphone amp. You might be asking, well, could I still use that version in this hybrid mod? And the answer is yes, because we're not using either of those areas of the circuits which are modified. So yes, you can. Okay, that looks better. Cleaned up. Okay, the next thing we need to do is remove the SMA connector on the mini PCB. Otherwise, it won't fit into the case of the ATS-20. These magnetic PCB supports are brilliant. See, they're flexible, as you can see. You can just move them to the PCB that you're working on. Really handy. Excuse the washing machine ambience in the background. I'm in a new electronics lab. I love it, but Mrs. Electro Banana says I have to also share it with the washing machine. So there you go. I want to share. I always get asked what equipment I'm using. The soldering I'm using is a Finersi HS01, and it's USB-C powered. I got it plugged into my work laptop power supply actually, but you can charge it. Sorry, you can power anything from 12 volts up to 20 volts USB-C, even with a power bank. And if you're interested in one of these, have a look at the link in my description. And Finersi have given a discount code, so you'll get a discount on one of these. They're really cheap, and as you can see, they're really powerful as well. I really recommend it. Actually, I've got two. I keep one in my kind of work bag, and I know I can just power it with my laptop power supply, and I'm never caught out. So I'm just heating the whole thing up here. I'm putting excess solder on and bridging the signal and ground connections on here. The idea is, oh sorry, it's a bit out of focus, is that I just heat up the whole body and that will transmit the heat to the pins on the bottom. And just give it a while, be patient. Don't pull it too early, let it get nice and hot. And it should just come off easily. Should be coming soon. And there we are. Comes off quite cleanly. Just try and show you there. Happy with that. Just clean it up a bit. And just see how the reverse side is. Yeah, not bad. I just tidy that up a bit. My OCD. Okay. Happy with that. Now to attach the wires to the mini PCB. It's a bit of flux on the Si4732. Now what I'm doing here is I'm applying a bit of leaded solder to make it easier to solder to, because it's unleaded as standard. And I'm just going to try and lift that reset leg, which is pin number 9. I'm going to do that by putting a scalpel blade underneath pin 9 and just heating it and slowly adding a little bit of pressure. Don't add too much because you'll rip the leg off or the track. Just gently ease it up. And now you should see that we've disconnected the reset line at pin 9 from the rest of the circuit. There you are, you see. Just gently bend it up. Be really careful. It's really easy to snap these legs off because they fatigue really easily. You can't bend them more than once really. Okay, just bend it up and that'll be ready for me to put that wire on. Remember, I need to connect this to ground. Right, the next thing I want to do is connect the battery to, the wires to the battery connections, which will go to the battery connections on the ATS-20. I like to use wire wrapping wire, solid core. I think it's AG26 or 28, I can't remember, but I'll show it to you later so you can see what I use. As I just strip it and tin it before I solder it. Now the negative. You can see the charge IC above these battery connections, and to the left the audio amplifier. And next we've got to do the control wires. You can see I've linked that pin that I've lifted up on pin 9 to ground, that black wire. Ground is pin 15 on this, so you can see that link to pin 15. Now I'm doing the reset connection on the PCB. He says, come on, there, that's better. So that's where pin 9 once went to. The next one is clock. Which go to the corresponding place on the ATS-20. And finally data. So that's all our control lines connected up. Now, as these connections are very delicate, I'm going to put a bit of hot glue. The easiest place to put it is on top of the process. I know it's going to make you cringe, but believe you me, it's the easiest place to put on and remove later if you need to. I'm also going to put a bit on top of the chip. So there we have it. So that's basically the Si4732 Mini side of things done. See, I got a bit of the glue there and a bit of the glue on the chip. Make it safe. Now, if you're following at home, congratulations, give yourself a pat on the back. That's the hardest bit done. Now you might be asking, what about the front panel? Well, don't worry, I designed one for you. And I've put the STL file in my Thingiverse site. I'll leave the link in the description, of course. And then if you've got a 3D printer, you can just download it and print it yourself. If you don't have one, then also that's not a problem. You can go to my project page on PCBWay, and I've also deposited the file there, and you can simply add that to the basket and have PCBWay print that and send that to you. So here's the new front panel. You can see it looks very similar to the original one, but you can see it's got 4 mounting holes on the front there, so you can screw it to the front of the ATS-20. Here's the original. You can see the original is a bit smaller, a bit thicker. Let me just show you how it fits on the front of the ATS-20 case. You see there it fits nice and snug, fits perfectly, holes line up, so no need to worry there. So the next thing to do is to put the display carefully into the connector on the main board of the Mini. So you open up that little door, that kind of lock, and carefully slide the ribbon cable all the way in. You'll know when it's all the way in because it will just kind of, you'll meet some resistance, and then push that, make sure it's straight, and then push down that little door or lever. There you go. And then carefully insert the display. It should just sit in there nicely. Might need a tiny little bit of a push, but you should just kind of pop in snugly. And then you want to get 4 M2 screws. Now I didn't have any, so I just cut off the original screws that was holding the Mini case together. So just put that into place, and then put these screws in. Now just do a final last check, make sure everything's together okay, make sure that when you press the encoder the board doesn't move, the screen is flush. Look for any gaps around the screen. This one looks okay. I've tested the fitting with 2 different types of board and it seems to be okay. Hopefully all the boards are the same dimension. Let me know if they're not. Okay, done. Next up is to dismantle and modify the ATS-20. See, it's in 2 halves. We're going to remove the top half first. So undo the top 2 screws on the front and on the back. Okay, now when pulling the lid off, be careful not to pull it too hard because you've got the speaker wires. See how big that speaker is? It virtually consumes the whole top lid. Look how big it is compared with the original. And that's the better of the 2 Mini Si47s I've got. 3247s I should say. So that's rated at 4 ohms. I think it's a 1.5 watt speaker. So disconnect that speaker so that we're not going to snag it by accident. I like how well made these ATS series receivers are. They're well thought out. There's very little soldering of wires in their construction. Got a lot of thought's been put into them. Some better than others. You see these two ribbon cables. That one, the bigger one's connecting the buttons and the display, and the smaller one the rotary encoder. And you see that thing there? That is the FM bandpass filter. And right in front of it, that little IC is the FM RF amplifier IC. Both those things the ATS-4732 doesn't have. So remove these by simply pulling them upwards. There's no interlock on these. They're quite strong compared with the display or LCD ribbon connectors. Still be careful with them though. Okay, so now everything's removed from between the front board, the control panel, so we can remove the bottom two screws. Okay, that's just about it. And done. The next thing we're going to do is disable the Arduino Nano, which is on the main board of the ATS-20. Now if you remember in the theory section, we're going to do that by linking the reset line, that should be not reset line because it's an active logic low, together with the ground connection next to it. That's convenient, and that means the reset is always active, i.e. always a logic low, and we'll make all of the I/O pins high impedance, effectively disconnecting them from the onboard Si4732 and everything else come to that matter. So the next thing to do is to attach the new front panel to the bottom part of the case of the ATS-20. Now to do that, I'm going to use the original screws from the front panel. I should have told you not to discard those, shouldn't I? Hopefully you didn't. So let's just put the first one in. Second one. These are M3 screws, by the way, just in case you did lose them. Or you might want to replace them with black ones. Okay, there we are. Now, you'll see these lines, these wires that we soldered to the Mini previously are way too long. So I'm going to measure them and then cut them to length, and then strip the ends and then tin them before soldering them onto the ATS-20 Plus main board. Okay, let's solder the wires on. Okay, I'm going to start off with ground. Oh, by the way, make sure you disconnect the power plug. Can you see I've disconnected the power on the bottom right there? Okay, so first of all, I'm going to solder the ground wire to the digital ground of the ATS-20 PCB, and I'm going to melt that solder joint, which you can see I pre-tinned, that through hole which I've already put solder on, and then I'm going to melt it and then push the wire into the through plated hole, give it a bit more strength. Then the next one is for the BAT, or the connection to the battery, after the switch, of course. Just change focus 1 minute so you can see what I'm doing. Sorry about the wobbly camera. Okay, so again, heat the joint and then push the wire through the through plated hole like so. So that's the power done. That's okay. Remember, we've now got 3 control lines. The first one is the reset line coming from the ESP32 on the Mini. The next one is the clock wire for this I2C serial communication. And finally, the data wire. They're all done. See, that was a lot easier than on the Mini, wasn't it? I just tidy up the cables a bit. I'll do a proper job later and clean up the flux, etc. I just want to test it for the time being. Just give you another view of what we've done, just so that you can make sure you get your connections in the same place. So just to summarize, you've got ground going to digital ground there. We've got VBAT going there. And then we've got reset, clock, and finally data. And there's just a view on the front board. Make sure you've got the power switch on. Off is down, on is up, and you always leave it in that position, of course. Then we reconnect the battery. And the moment of truth. Obviously double check all your connections. Then we want to reconnect the speaker. Like so, and we should have everything connected. Turn it on. And we have life. I'm very happy with that. Let's see if I can pick something up. It works. I got a signal. That's what I want to hear. It's moments like this that make it all worth it, isn't it? Let's put the lid back on.
He left it for the Saturday, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure you get the send off over the last.
Sounds good.
Last couple of games, he's still got targets. You know,
he wants the 200 goals.
200 goals. Can you imagine 199?
Looks good. Sounds good. That's the original knob. It's a bit big for the screen. You might want to change it. It's going over the screen just a little bit, but at least have a big knob like that. It's easy to spin. You can kind of put your finger on it and whiz it around, which is good when you're altering the BFO or something like that. Right, I'm going to tidy this up inside a bit, clean up the flux, and put the screws in. And then I'll test it properly.
Earlier in the day, some 2.6 million eligible voters headed to the polls.
So before I put the lid on, let's just have a look at the finished product. So you can see I've done a bit of cable management. I cleaned up the flux and arranged the wires a little bit. So you can see that we've got the VBAT wire there and the free signal wires. There's that link to put the nano into its reset state. And then looking on the other side, you can see where we got the glue securing those delicate connections on the Mini. And then there's the USB-C on the Mini that you're going to use for programming it. And when you do that, just make sure that you haven't got the ATS-20 plugged in for charging. You only want one USB connected at a time. So now I'm going to compare the audio between the two, the original and the hybrid. So here's the original on VHF or FM. Sounds pretty awful, doesn't it? Okay, I think there's enough of that. So let's now compare it with the hybrid. Same station. I've got SMA to BNC adapter on the back. Make sure that your antenna switch is in the FM position.
And things of that nature, so that you can
what a difference.
set those as destination.
And when will that happen? When will we have that?
Well, I'm going to shut up for a bit and let you listen.
In the future, Amos says, I'll be able to talk to Glide and Glide will be able to talk back. Hey Glide, take me to the elevator. Hey Glide, take me to the nearest bus stop. With combinations of mapping data and routes saved by other users, it'll become easier for blind people to travel around new places. Before he set up his new company, Amos was with Microsoft when they launched Soundscape, a celebrated navigation app for blind people. He's also been the chair of Guide Dogs UK, so if anyone can create a new way for blind people to get about, it's this guy. Maybe that's why lots of blind people have already pre-ordered the Glide, like Chris and Michaela.
I got to walk with it last year and I was so thrilled I almost cried. Yeah.
So let's test the HF performance now. So this is Radio Free Asia, and to give you some idea of the strength of the signal, I'm in Singapore and this is being transmitted from South Korea. Right, so let's see what that sounds like on a trusted reference, the H-Data D808. And finally, let's test it on our hybrid. Remember to make sure the antenna switch is now in the shortwave position. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that actually sounds the best of the three. Let me know what you think in the comments. But I'm very happy with that. I just want to show you the advantage of having the big knob. You can spin it, which is great for the BFO. Anyway, it's a matter of preference. Change it if you like. So I hope what I've shown you in this video gives you the confidence to try this if you've got both these radios. And I do think it gives a new lease of life to the old ATS-20 and provides a good platform for you to try out all this new software, which I think will come for the new Mini. So thank you very much for watching, and especially thank you very much for all my subscribers. I'm at 3,000 subs now. I never thought it would get to that. So I value each and every one of your subs. Thank you. It does help me to bring more of this type of content to you. Remember to check the description for all the links. And until next time, take care, and 73.